we're going to look at stenciling with the airbrush. I have this zebra print stencil that I'm going to use on my cupcake liner of the cookie here. So this cookie is by Eckrindale, and I've iced this area white, and it's pretty dry. I wouldn't say it's completely dry, but pretty dry, that when the stencil goes on it doesn't damage the surface. And I'm going to dust some black onto this. Now, because I don't want to get black on my top area of my cookie, I just cut a paper towel, the slight curve. It doesn't really matter if it gets up there, but I just don't want to dirty my cookie, and I'm going to be icing that a different color, so just shielding that from the airbrush, and then I'm going to dust this area. When you're using your airbrush, as you know, it creates air, and so I suggest using a stick or something just to hold it in place so that when you're dusting your surface, no color gets under the stencil. Try to shoot directly from the top so that the mist doesn't get under your stencil. Here, because I don't have a cookie on the sides here, it causes it to curl up right there. So what you could do is put several cookies together, probably fit 4, and then place the stencil like that, and it would be straight up. But since this is just a demo, I don't have an actual order, and I don't have many cookies to do this, so I'm just going to place it like that, and we'll hope for the best. So here's the cookie with the stencil. It's ready to get sprayed. I'm out of black, so one more drop should do it. Really try to shoot from the top so that the mist doesn't get under your stencil. And now I'm going to lift it off right up, and there we go. Perfect airbrush. There you go. This cupcake cookie I iced in the Delphinium Blue, I believe it's called. And again, I'm shielding that area, and I've got this Baroque, I think it's called, stencil, and I'm going to be placing that on my surface to get this design on my cupcake liner. Now, because it's curling, I'm going to need to just put my fingers like this in the corners to maintain the curve so that it stays against the cookie. So let me start the airbrush here. So I'm just going to place my hand here to hold it against the cookie so that I don't have that bubble up. Do a little test on the side, and now I'm going to airbrush the cookie. There we go. And now I can lift off my stencil and reveal my design. And there we go. This is going to look nice. I'm going to do pearl, and then I'm going to finish it off with a little bit of outlining. So I've outlined the swirl of the cupcake. I had been looking for a cupcake cutter that had more of like that peak and the swirl look. Most of the cupcake cutters it's more round, less realistic. Eckrindale decided to carry this cutter in their collection. It's my design, and so I'm going to start from the top little corner here, and following that curve, I'm going to take it to this corner here. I'm having trouble with it touching down, so there. I want it to go right here. And then this corner here to this one. You see the flow is the same. And then I'm going to create a section here. There we go. And now this little spot. And there we go. And so when I fill this in the quilting technique alternating, we'll give it those bumps and give the cupcake some realism. Working on the cupcake swirl to create the bumps, the quilting. So I'm going to start with this first area here, and I'm going to quickly fill it, and then I'm going to take a toothpick and I'm going to drag it around to make sure it gets in to here, this corner. And since it's a small area, I don't want any of those craters, so I'm just dragging my toothpick in there so that I'm sure that it's touched down kind of in all of the areas. And then I add a little bit of icing for the bump. I want that bump to be created. And so now I'm skipping, and same thing, making sure that I'm getting into all these little corners. I can take the toothpick and just make sure that it's gotten everywhere. You're pulling it to the top. I don't want to have a crevice in the top of my cupcake swirl. See, I had outlined it in white, and it really is of no, it'll all just be hidden when the bumps are filled in, all of them, you know, so you won't even see them. So now here I'm adding some extra icing for the dimension, and now I'm just coaxing it down to remove little imperfections. I'll flip it over just for my last section here, just so my angle is good. Here. My tip is a slightly big one here, so I'm going to pull it with a toothpick to this area. There. The thing that's good about the black airbrush, you're eating less of it, less black food color, so you're not getting the taste, and you won't have the bleeding, that darn bleeding that so many of you have problems with. I seem to dodge that bullet. Not to jinx myself, I don't do anything special, but I've not had any issues with bleeding. So there we go. So once this is crusted, I'll be able to move to the next step, which is filling those two small areas. At this point here, I could, if I wanted, add some sprinkles right there. I think I'm going to add a flower to this. So the cupcake top has crusted, and I'll be able to fill in the leftover area. I'm going to turn it over so that I can have a good angle on this, just because of this here. It's close to the edge. So I'm going to quickly fill and then take my toothpick to push it into the areas. Once the icing has a base, like not touching the cookie, then it'll easily slide around and my bump will be created. Here I'm going to drag it all the way to make sure I get no crater there. And now I can pile in my icing for the bump. And I'll slowly push it around for it to heal. And you can see all the airbrush that got on that area is completely hidden. There wasn't that much there because I did the masking with the paper towel, but what little did end up there. And here, this small area. There we go. So with my toothpick, I just kind of drag it around to make sure I'm getting all my, if there's any air bubbles under there. and then just pile it on for that dimension. I think I could have waited more for the icing to crust the earlier section, but it looks like it's alright. Here I have a piece of dry icing that fell. I'm nervous to touch it there. So there we go. If I hold it up, you can see the nice bumps for my cupcake swirl. Here I'm going to zoom in. Can you see the craters appearing? I guess I didn't drag the toothpick enough. Mind you, this is old icing. When I'm doing these demos, I'll leave my icing, you know, this was made 4 days ago. You know, it doesn't happen when usually I have fresh icing, but I guess I didn't do it, you know, enough with the toothpick. But curious, the other cookie, you see, it's fine. So I think the dragging of the toothpick is essential to avoid those, because same icing. I've got these little flowers. That if you wanted, you could add for a little something extra on the cupcake. I wouldn't put it on the top of the swirl to hide that nice peak. Maybe you could put it right here or here, and adding some of that teal to the center of the flower to carry the color over. So there's that little flower. I could just do a center there, and you can see how it would look if I added that little accent. Or I think even better, what if I put it right there? Perfect. I'm going to talk about something to do with your leftover icing. Here is a tip. I don't know if you've ever seen this at the store and you don't know what it's for. It's got a nail in the middle. If you look inside, I don't know if you can see, there's like steel kind of rod in the middle. And so this is to make flowers. This tip is an Ateco 140, and I'm going to show you how to use it. Here are a few flowers done with a larger version of the same tip. They all work the same, and all you're doing is resting it flat on your parchment paper, and you get ready to twist and squeeze. Hold your parchment paper in place and lift off. And if you want, you can grab a paintbrush and just push in the petals like that, and after you can come back and do dots for the middle. I'm doing them in white so that when I want to use them, I can just dust them in the color I want with my airbrush, and I'll have flowers for, you know, any project it'll match, instead of making blue ones or pink ones and not having the color I need for the project I'm working on. The larger flower was done with a 190 Wilton, and I'm going to show you a smaller tip. This is a 140. And I've filled up a whole cookie sheet of them, and I'm just going to leave them to dry, and I'll have them for my next project. Some of them won't turn out, but you just dump those and you keep your good ones. And like I say, you color them the color that you need. You could probably dust these as well with petal dust. I'd be careful though, because they are fragile. It's royal icing. The airbrush is good for that because you're not handling them. So placing your tip against the cookie sheet or the surface, and then you twist and squeeze at the same time, and it's important to lift straight up, because if you go at an angle, you'll damage one of the petals. So turning and twisting, and then squeezing at the same time, straight up. Twist, up. Here, am I in frame here? Get ready, twist, squeezing, up. And so sometimes the middle part of the flower is not perfect, so you can just come with a a paintbrush and set them down so that it's a nice surface for you to pipe in the middle when you come back. And there you go.